I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To together with city council for our wonderful city of tourism protections and opportunities it provides. We're grateful for you and for use our community. We ask the help us protect those things that we have. And we're grateful for each other and our neighbors and friends. We pray we can treat each other with kindness and love and civility. And we pray for peace and happiness. We pray for a civil meeting that all who have a desire to share their voices may do so. We pray for continued success of our city and to be a light on the hill. We thankful for all we have in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. You are now going to have some meeting event. So this is our 100th year of the Tornado Days. We have our Junior Rodeo Queen contest. Our contest is to acknowledge these beautiful young, all of those that are participated in the contest. And so I just wanted to announce them. They will be reigning over our Tornado Days. Queen last night that was crowned is Bryden Nielsen. First attendant, Shelby Van Tassel. Second attendant, Lady Thurgood. Our junior queen is Lyra Priest. Our first princess is Presley Butler, and our junior princess is Boston Therese. And we're excited, and like I said, you will be seeing them over our celebration. The next event then that will occur with our celebration is on Monday, August 5th. All of you should have received your newsletter, no matter how many times we put there is still an error that's first. It's 3 places that said the correct Monday, August 25th, and 1 place that was a typo and Friday. That will be our community dinner and dance. And because it is our 100th year celebration, we're trying to bring back some of our nostalgic events that we had. There's World Troll, that was one of the very first events. There's going to be softball tournament. The Fundero was famous for their tournaments that they had. There's going to be a cowboy mounted shoot along with all of our other events. And so if you didn't get a copy of the mission, now we have some extra copies here. You can also look at our website and it will list out events. Another announcement I just want to remind you of that I did announce last time is the Central Weaver Sewer District is going to be having a tourism taxation that all of you are invited to. This public hearing is going to be held on August the 18th at 6 o'clock p.m. at the Central Weaver Sewer Administrative Building, which is located at 2618 West Pioneer Road in Marietta, Slaterville. And there's also a Zoom link that if any of you are interested in that, we can post this information out for that. Just one other quick announcement I want you to be aware of, even though it's not yet, but will be. Yes, we have a very active veterans program here in the state of Utah. And many of you are familiar with Major Brent Taylor, that used to be the mayor. He was serving as the mayor of North Ogden when he was killed in combat. And they do a lot of different events, and Silver City, along with the state of Utah, has been invited to share with them in their events. And some of these are they have the flight of the flag, where they carry the flag at Coldwater Canyon. And so we're going to get involved with this more as a city, and we will be posting some of these events involved in. If you would be interested, in helping carry the flag and then a lot of events. So again, I think this is something great to be involved in. We really do appreciate all those that have served in the past, those that are currently serving, all of those that served in our service. Okay, so I can't think of any other upcoming events going out. Fine. So our next thing on If anyone has a public comment they would like to make, please come to the podium. You have 3 minutes. State your name. Now that we have been on our road, I just had a couple of questions for the word from you. And this is in regards to the CRA. In August of last year, we have Ross, who's the economic development director for the Santa City, came into the council and presented. He mentioned in the meeting that early this issue of property funds, that it's likely that the other entities, with the school district that we're counting, may want them to have more skin in the game, and they would be asked to contribute a portion of their sales as well as maybe for the locations for the I reached out to the police to just make sure I understood that correctly, so that that is accurate. But that is a possibility. These studies, with Smith and other cities, I believe it's for not have enough of a property tax that they had to use some of their self-tax generated from the project. So I know I'm just getting to the planning commission. We recommended not participating in the CRA. That's a concern that I have. Also, in the Berkeley study, it mentions that the CRAs use property tax as well as other forms of tax on page 5 and 6 of that study. And I had also reached out to me before this came into the commission and asked if the other entities don't participate at the level of 75%, there is incremental 75 years, or not at all, the first portion to go up. And that was confirmed that would be the case. So I just would make sure we're looking out for the rest of the trip, but the revenue that's coming. I also asked about the international cost of the realization $2 to $3 million. Yes. But then tonight, it was so that they were using a portion of that. And I was just confused on whether or not he's going to be paying front for his portion of the village station, or if that will be paid off to cells that are generated from this, and that would well went towards that. I just worked it into some natural way, so there's a big get some purpose. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, come to space. I am a Berkeley resident. First, I'm going to say that thank you. We were going to be able to talk about anything else, right? It's been a long path, and I know you guys have had a lot of sleepless nights thinking about this project. A couple of things that I want to talk about. First of all, Smith wants this property. They wouldn't have their name on the board if they weren't interested. They've done their due diligence. These big retailers do their homework. They're not worried about a store being shuttered. When you look at the Kroger stores that are going to close across the country, those are going to be gentrified stores, probably similar to one up on 1900 West, kind of their old models, neighborhoods that don't support them anymore. We need to realize that this Smith is not going to just draw from 9,000 over residents. It's going to draw from Rest Haven, it's going to draw from Roy, it'll draw from Clinton, Grand people like new things, people like new stores, and that store will be just fine. The retail pads in front will be a bonus. I know everybody wishes for Chick-fil-A or whatever they want in there, whatever's going to go in there, we think it's fine. I do have some hesitations around the CRA. Last night I attended the Weaver County School Board meeting, and it was something about truth and taxation. So it was a shell game where they told us, well, we don't really want the 21%. How about we go for 5 instead? So, but I picked up more than just that. There were quite a few comments. They had over 60 people that got up and commented. And there were several recurring themes, and a couple of them were around CRAs. Weaver County School District is currently supporting about $14 million in money that they're leaving on the table through CRAs, and people spoke very negatively about it. So, you know, as we look at CRAs, I don't think these organizations are going to be as open as we feel they might be. Everybody needs money, and everybody's asking for more money. So, what I do support this project, I really do. I think, you know, instead of just 90 rooftops on that lot that costs the city money, I really see some great development coming there, but not at the cost of the CRA. Thank you.
Suggestions, for instance, this project is not part of what we're doing. plan that we, the residents, supported and voted for. So why are we still entertaining it and making exceptions for it? We should no longer be advising, adjusting, or coaching the developer on how to make the project more improved. That's not the role of the council. Suggesting changes to help push this through is guiding the developer on how to bypass the limits. That's unacceptable. Stuart Adams did not do the septic repairs. Smith is the developer. In fact, he's been very boastful that Smith doesn't. They are the developer, implying that we as residents should feel honored and excited by the church. He talks as if Smith's doing an extraordinary thing for us. But let's be clear, this isn't a gift, it's a business deal. That doesn't make the proposal any better. It simply confirms that many of us already believe this project is driven by money and influence, not by Stuart Adams is not personal investment beyond profit, and he wouldn't share his benefit to it. If this turns into a money pit for her, he's still going to live on his house on the side of the mountain and not care about his people. It will be our money pit to ourselves, and we may not recover it if it doesn't. And with Walmart coming in, the projected what we can bring in goes way down real fast. With money comes power, and we are at risk of handing that power over. By allowing Stuart Adams and Sherry Bingham to steer this conversation, we are essentially giving them control over against the general plan. And we have the power and responsibility to stand up for what is best for our community and our families. This project will also create a domino effect. If the general plan is reopened, the landowner to the south, another developer will also certainly jump in. As one of the good old boys up on the hill on the state capitol, he will take this as a green light to move forward for possible development, piggybacking off Stewart. I urge the council to stop entertaining the Stuart Adams development altogether. No more special consideration, no more change, no more influence from others who have their own agenda. To the residents, know what candidate signs of place along the properties of 4700 West, 5500 South. Pay attention to who owns that land and ask yourself why those particular candidates are being supported. I'm not judging anyone that is running, it's just simply that I would personally look more closely. It's important to understand who we're backing our candidates and why. Also, Sherry Bingham, the residents of Hooper expect honesty, transparency, and ethical leadership. Your duties as mayor were hanging by a thread just weeks ago. And somehow you managed to hold up to that. That should serve as a reminder to you that your position is a privilege granted by the people, not a platform for your ego, for your personal agenda. I urge you to act in the best interest of our community that it was entrusted to you with that responsibility.
Karen Peterson, 4651 minutes of South River. Upper logo says preserving our past and protecting our present. The plan for Smith Plaza is not preserving our past or protecting us now. It is bringing in a bunch of new stores, not just Smith's, and a ton of new housing will go in there behind. It will be adding these other stores too, plus a gas station. So it's not just a Smith.
Smith is not going to pay for the pump station. I had that down. I didn't realize he was going to pay a small sum. Is that correct? A small sum. I'd like to know what that sum is going to be. And we'll be footing the bill for the rest of it. Smith doesn't care. They're in the business to make money. They're not here to help our city. They're here to help themselves. This will be located in a badly congested area close to the school, no through street on 4700 West. All the residents around it will suffer. You neglect us on the east side of Hooper all the time. None of us are going to have, but none of you are going to have to live by it. We have to live by it. So keep that in mind when you make your vote. Most of the people for it are new in the area in the last few years, and they want convenience. The few older residents that want it is because it's not going to be by their house. Smith says it's not in the housing development business, which means that we'll turn that part over to a housing development company. They want smaller and smaller lots, which means more and more housing, and that's too much for Hooper. No one is going to get off the Legacy Highway. I'm sorry. Nobody's going to go off the Legacy Highway to come to Hooper to go to Smith's. I don't get off the freeway to go to West Point. I don't get off the freeway to go to Syracuse, Smiths. Nobody's going to get off the freeway to come to Hooper. I can tell you right now. Smith is in the business to help themselves and not us. Walmart is coming at Midland Drive. Smith is closing some stores to cut down because they aren't getting the business, and it's not going to work. You keep dragging this approval or disapproval out. I've come here 3 or 4 times myself and spoke up. And this is the last chance for you that are leaving us to help us. Please help us. Vote no. We have no one else to help us. Make tonight the right decision for all of us and vote no on this Smith Plaza tonight so we don't have to keep coming and coming and coming.
My name's Bruce Taylor. I could talk for an hour about this Smith situation, but I only got 3 minutes. I'm here, and as you all know from the meeting on June 5th, I'm totally against this Smith. Why? All it's ever talked about is the CRA. From day one, from over a year ago, Stuart Adams has said he's not paying a penny towards it. He should be paying for the pump station. Everybody knows and agrees with that. If he ain't paying for it, that means that we are all paying for it in some way. 40 acres of Hooper's land, 25 acres of commercial. And if maximize this project, once it is maximized and built, it will look like the intersection in Syracuse, in Layton, in West Point. We here in Hooper have and want to continue to be different. We don't want to be like West Haven and everyone else. Financially, how would this affect Hooper? There was the LRB study, and the answers to these questions of the study was $172,000 per year. People, this estimate should have been $500,000 to $1 million to have any effect on how this would help our city. Once this is built, our whole city will never be the same. It'll be just like the start of how all the other cities started around us: West Haven, Roy Clinton, and Syracuse. Historically, Hooper City's budget has been balanced and has had a surplus of funds. 80% of the residents who participated in the general plan indicated they would like to see Hooper remain rural with larger lots and no high-density housing. On the itinerary that was put out today, item 1, discussion and consideration of possible motion of conditional approval of the general plan amendment. I encourage all of you to deny this tonight. On June 5th, you all had the opportunity to make a motion and to have this denied. And none of that happened. And tonight is the night that, if that's how you feel, I would appreciate if that's what we do, is deny this. Second item, discussion and consideration of possible motion and conditional approval for a rezone request. Once again, I encourage you to say exactly how you feel and deny this item once and for all. This has gone on for over a year. The third item, discussion and consideration of conditional approval subject to finalization of development of agreements for Terrestrada. Once you start putting the words finalization on pieces of paper, that means they think they're getting pretty dang close to what's going on here. I appreciate all of you people up there, and I encourage you to make a motion tonight to deny this, and I hope that we have enough support that we can have it denied and be done with it. Thank you.
Jake Kelso, Hooper resident. I was here the last time that LRB discussed this amount, and he explained the 170 that you brought up. And he said it had to do with the value of the money today, what it would be going forward. He's changing his tune. He's now saying 500,000. You should go back and watch the video, because he made it very clear that that was our value today. He also now says there's a problem in the report that in 4 years, we're gonna have 14,000 people. Well, can we trust any of the report then if you didn't even get that right? I've emailed all the council members about my feelings on the TIF. It's just another way for crony capitalists to put in laws that allow them to take our tax money that is earmarked on our property taxes for specific taxes and use them for their own benefit and their own gain. And it's completely wrong, and we shouldn't support it as a city. And if we do support it, how are we going to tell the next developer we're not going to create a CRA and set up a TIF for them? It's going to put us in a bad position going forward with every other commercial developer that comes in. I'm sure I have other thoughts. I just can't think in front of this many people, but that's how I feel. I think you guys should vote against it. We've asked, I've talked to Stuart Adams multiple times, and I've told him, you know, I don't want the rezone behind the building, and I don't think we should be paying for the lift station. He doesn't care. He's just pushing forward what he came to us from day one and expecting us to approve it without making any considerations for what Hooper actually wants. And I just, again, the TIFs are voted in by politicians to benefit them. And as we've seen in the news today, he has a history of voting in things to benefit him and his family. I saw it.
And I wasn't going to get up, but we got so much negativity against this Smith. Oh, Larry Ropolato, Hooper resident, 66 years here. And I'm all for it. And if all you people out here that are against it, you better talk to the people in West Hooper, because I'm running for city council and I am all for it. And after listening to this work meeting, the last couple months of looking at all this stuff, I actually had some reservation on there. And after sitting in here and how clearly it was explained to me, I'm even more excited for it. I believe Hooper needs it. You know, there's a lot of us that do want it, and whatever happens, happens. But thank you.
Okay, seeing no other public comments, we will move on. The next one then is a consent item. It's the approval of the minutes dated July 17th, 2025. Hopefully council has had a chance to review these minutes. Did you see any corrections or additions?
The only thing I wanted to bring up was the vote on the removal of powers by the mayor. So the vote, we need to be careful when we conduct our meetings. We need to do it in the same order every meeting. And there's a thing called the Robert's Rules of Order. And in those guidelines or those principles, it talks about city councils being able to vote on city matters. So there was 5 of us here. We had a vote, but there was also a vote by the mayor, and there should not have been. And so I would recommend in our minutes that vote be taken out, even though it won't change the outcome, just to maintain the order of how we should operate as a city.
So let me give some clarification, and Ree can go ahead and do that as well. So when you are having a motion that is shifting powers or removing powers for the mayor does get a vote. But how that works is if there would have been a majority of the city council that would have voted in favor of removing the mayor's powers, and I would have voted with them, then that would have been counted. But if I voted against it, it had to be a unanimous vote by the city council. Am I explaining that? Yes, yes. So that's why I had a vote. So it was done correctly. If I would have voted yes to remove my power, and there would have been the majority, then the vote would have carried because I voted against it, but also 2 other city council members. You would have had a majority of the other 5 members. So that was correct how the minutes were. I did have a couple of corrections that were just words to be taken out. If you go to page 2, under public comments, there was just was before were resolved. So if the closed door meeting took place, and if so, where the problems were resolved, there's just a second word that needs to be removed. And down below, under the statement by Carrie Call, again, there's just a word. If Hooper had to the budget, if the Hooper had the budget for it. Those were just a couple of words that I noticed.
I just had one point I'd like to have clarified. This is under action item 7. And it also had to do with shifting of the mayoral powers. And Councilman Hill kind of explained that, after we had that closed door meeting, that he would have some oversight with the check register. He also brought up that I would be involved in interviews of employees as well. So I know there was an interview of an employee, but I was notified at 2 o'clock and the interview was at 3 o'clock and I wasn't home and couldn't attend. So the question I have, did the interview take place or was it canceled so that we could follow the procedure that we approved in the minutes? And if someone was interviewed, were they hired or not hired, or how many people were even interviewed? My whole point is we had this in the minutes, and yet I was only notified 1 hour before that took place. So I'd just like some clarification on that.
So can we go back? Right now, what we are doing on the agenda is we are approving the minutes. Are there any other corrections or additions to the minutes?
Well, I'm looking at that. Does that need to be corrected then on item 7? That's not really what we approved. Does that have to be corrected so that, or not?
I guess I'm not 100% following you, because what these minutes are is what were discussed in the meeting, and what our deputy recorder recorded as the minutes. So what you have in front of you is what was said at that meeting. So are you saying that what she typed is incorrect? That's what we're approving right now, are the minutes.
I think what he's saying is, like, in the minutes, it states some specific, it gives them an outline of what his duty is going forward. And that wasn't followed like the following week. So do we take him off of that, or do we actually follow what the minutes say? And he's involved in the interviews just like Ryan is involved in that. I think that's what he's saying. So yeah, we probably ought to approve the minutes, but they ought to be followed from here on out, like that approval. So I think that's what you're asking, right, Dale?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, I understand that, and that could be a discussion for another time. But right now on the agenda, we are approving the minutes. So do any of you have any additions or corrections to the minutes dated June 17th? Did anyone else see any additions or corrections? No additions or corrections. So is there someone that will make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes dated July 17th, 2025.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilmember Wilcox. Is there a second? The second is made by Councilmember Hill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those motions are approved then with just those couple of corrections. Okay. Okay, then the next thing on our agenda was going to be a discussion on the Tomato Days. Erin Mon was not able to come tonight, and so she emailed everyone email about that, concerning that. So if anyone has any questions, I think she gave you her contact information that you can follow up with Erin. Did everyone receive that email from Erin? Yeah, okay. Okay, so next on the agenda then,
Can we ask some
Oh.
questions?
sure.
About Tomato Days, generally, the council's been involved in some of the decision making. As far as dates and times and events and so on and so forth. And I don't feel like any of us have had any say in it this time. I don't know about the rest of you, but who decided to have the dinner on Monday? This is my first question.
So without Erin being here, oops, do you want to wait another time when Erin's here and you can have that discussion? She is our community events coordinator, so I think that would be a fitting discussion to have with Erin. We could schedule another meeting if you would like to, just specifically for that with Erin, if you would like to.
I think all the decisions have already been made is what my frustration is. And so, I mean, it'd be nice to know just that question. Why are we having the dinner on Monday after we've had it on Friday for ever?
Well, I can give a little bit of feedback because of that. You know, there were a lot of things that I wasn't as familiar with being mayor, but one thing I am very familiar with is community events. Is it that one up there? Is that better? We hope. We hope. As in having been someone that has done community events in Hooper City for 20 years, with the exception of 1 year, I have a little bit of input on, or not input, but a little bit of background on Hooper Tomato Days. It was not always done on Friday. And I remember when I was helping with Tomato Days and we changed it to Friday, and the concern was it interfered with ball games. And there were football games and there were other collegiate games. And that was an issue about having it on Friday. I remember, I think it was you and I, Councilmember Hill, that actually had that discussion when I was doing Tomato Days. One of the things that we talked about this year with Tomato Days, because of our 100th year, we do have some additional events. One of the reasons that were talked about, I believe with Erin and some of the other committee people, that the volunteers, we have a great group of volunteers here in Hooper, was Monday night. Having it would be probably a more better time that people could come. We now have 4 high schools in Hooper that our students are attending. So you take that many high school events that could be happening on a Friday night, that could take a substantial amount of people from our community attending events. So that was one consideration I remember hearing her talk about. And also we're going to do a family dance. One of the big things they did back in the days with Hooper Tomato Days is they always had a dance. And so this year it's not going to just be the community dinner, it's going to be a community dinner and a dance. And it's actually labeled family dinner and a dance. So that, I think that was from speaking with Erin, the reasoning for Monday was to be able to involve more families that wouldn't be torn in a lot of different directions with school activities. Okay, any other questions on that with? Oh, okay, I can answer. The question too was discussed with cornhole. We did have cornhole last year. We had an organization that came in and did cornhole. But what was found last year is there were very few Hooper residents that were participating. The majority of those people participating came from outside of the city, and it really didn't draw the Hooper. Instead, what is going to happen now is there is going to be cornhole that'll also be going on during the dance that will be set up for families. So hopefully, again, families will be participating in that rather than possibly just driving, because it was a company outside of Hooper that did that. They organized the tournament, they brought the people, and I actually went and was there a couple of the nights, and there wasn't one Hooper person there when I was there. Yeah, well, not the night I was there. I didn't see you there, so. Yeah, anyway. So that was the thoughts they had, was having it during the dinner instead. So, okay, any other questions?
Okay, so next thing on the agenda then is the discussion motion reconsideration of Renovestors LLC request for rezone. This was something that had came up a little bit before. Reed, I don't know if you have some background, and I'll turn some time to you.
There we go. Yeah. This is a matter that came up several years ago. There's been a lot of discussion since then. There's been litigation back and forth since then. The conditions, I think, were not necessarily clearly understood then. My recollection is that we had a favorable recommendation from the City Planning Commission. And then the council decided not to approve it by a very close vote. The request, my recollection is, may have been made before the change in the general plan. And so I think the question today is whether you're willing to take another look at that. And maybe because of the fact that it was pre the current general plan and complied to the requirements then, maybe go ahead and grant it. So that's the request, as I understand it. I think they may have someone here that would like to address it.
Yes, and if you'd like to come up and address the council. Do any of you have any questions for him? And if this mic's not on, can we not hear it? Okay.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to reconsider and approve 4440 South 6300 West to Renovestors LLC to rezone to R2.
The motion was made by Councilmember Hill. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second is made by Councilmember Wilcox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the discussion of the Terrestrada LLC development. There have been in public comments a lot of questions that came up. And so I don't know, we have Mr. Birmingham with us here tonight. I don't know if you would like to address maybe some of these questions that some of the audience had, or if anybody with the Terrestrada group would like to answer any questions. I don't know if all of the council's questions were answered during the work meeting, if you're even ready to make a proposal yet, or should we just more time?
Stuart Adams with Terrestrada. I think if the council had questions of Mr. Birmingham, it would be good. He's here, which is great. But I sensed some questions in the council meeting that hadn't been answered, and we would be willing to take time to try to answer those. You got a lot of information there. It's really at the will of the council as to whether you have additional questions, and we'd be surely willing to work to try to answer those over time. But while Mr. Birmingham's here, if you have questions of him, it would be good to ask those if you have any, or if he'd like to explain any questions that happened out of the public comment.
Does council have any additional questions for Mr. Birmingham?
Can we go back to one of the members of the planning commission had several questions that would be good to be answered by some of these gentlemen. I don't know if you remember them or if she needs to repeat them. Okay.
My memory. Jason Birmingham with LRB Public Finance Advisors. We conducted the economic and fiscal impact analysis relative to the proposed project. I believe the question that was asked relative to the CRA was to the extent of what our analysis assumed is we did assume that property tax would be the only vehicle that would be used to support the sewer lift station. As we noted in our previous work session, we did not undertake a full feasibility, if you will, of the participating taxing entity's interest or willingness to, provide a property tax increment. So I think in addressing that issue, I don't think it's fair to say that one way or another of whether or not property tax increment is the path forward. There's certainly dialogue or suggestions that ultimately it's the taxing entities that have to decide whether or not they participate with property tax. I think a comment that we had made was more in line with there's still a cost associated with the sewer lift station to the extent that that needs to be defrayed, which is what we can concluded in our study, that there'd have to be other revenue sources or resources or financing options that would have to be looked at. We didn't solely say that sales tax was the only approach, but sales tax is an approach that has been taken in other places on a limited basis. That wasn't the nature of our study. That was more hypothecated, I think, in terms of what if the TIF isn't approved by the other taxing entities, then what do? We still have a potential $2.5 million issue relative to the sewer lift station.
I think that was the one question. The other question, as I recall, was, did we not include the full study of the sewer lift station, or did we only assume the cost that the developer wouldn't be responsible to pay for? And I just wanted to clearly identify that we assumed the full cost of the sewer lift station in the analysis based on, I think, engineering estimate that was provided by JUB Engineering. We inflated that for some construction inflation to derive more closely to the 2.5 million. The comment that came up earlier in the work session was the idea of impact fees and how impact fees are typically used, where if a regional type of public infrastructure system is put in place, sometimes that's front-ended by a development, but then future development that get benefit from it either pay impact fees or some kind of a fee to defray that. The point that was made there was the development itself will proportionally demand a certain amount of that sewer lift station. So it's been our impression that whatever the equivalent residential user demand that the development creates versus the total amount of sewer lift station capacity that it serves, it would be that proportionality. So they would pay, as an example, if it's 2.5 million for the full and they're 20% of it, they would pay 20% of the 2.5 million. The city does not currently have an impact fee set up for this sewer lift station, so we would have to craft something in order to take care of that. The TIF, though, was more of a way to say regionally beneficial to all the taxing entities if they supported it. That was the premise in the economic or fiscal impact study, was that there was benefit across all of the taxing entities. So there was more benefit than what they gave up in tax increment to even cover the sewer lift station. Obviously, if the taxing entities don't participate through property tax increment, you still have the cost that has to be defrayed. And I'm not sure if there was another question that you might have.
Will you come to the microphone, just because if not, others can't hear you?
In a smaller group where questions can be answered and discussed rather than trying to do it in a presentation. So my thought would be you're better off to continue what we did in the earlier meeting until the council is ready to make a decision. And I don't know that they're ready at this point.
Okay, so yeah, so should we do that then? Is that what you're
That would be my
suggesting?
suggestion.
Okay.
When he said in the work session that he would pay for his portion, what does that look like as far as upfront? Does he upfront the entire cost of the lift station? In case of a CRA, my understanding is you can decide in a development agreement how that's going to happen and have the developer pay for it upfront. And is he saying that then, like with the CRA, you get these tax increments from these different entities? It wouldn't go to pay off his portion. He's going to cover his portion, and that the CRA increment would go to pay off everybody, just the rest of it that didn't cover that little bit that you mentioned was only for his portion of this development. Like with if they did a pioneering agreement, if he fronted it up front and then it was brought back to him with impact fees, is it the same kind of thing, or is the CRA going to pay for all of it and the developer is not paying for any portion of it? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
That's a good question. So the answer to that question, I'll just restate it the way I understood it. But the idea of the sewer lift station being a public necessity or a public infrastructure need that needs to go in place in order to accommodate this development. It also has additional benefit or capacity beyond that for other development growth. The question is proportional to the development itself. How is it construed that the developer pays for that? What's the mechanism, et cetera? We did not detail that in the study. That was beyond our scope, really, in terms of the study. I think what I offered to the city council in the work session was some advice relative to development agreement and how you would tailor that. And I think certain things like, well, what proportion of share do you pay? And then do you pay that up front? Do you pay that over time? Is that defrayed with tax increment? To me, a lot of that is yet to be digested, but part of a development agreement. My point is that it's very typical that there's a proportional amount of the cost that's for the development. There's also costs of that improvement that's going to benefit a much larger segment. And the idea of impact fees, the idea of many of these tools is to make sure that it's proportional, equitable, and fair. I think the question of whether or not it's defrayed out of the developer's pocket or whether it's defrayed out of the tax increment was a question that the council asked, which is, why doesn't it just all get financed by the developer? And to that, we did address that in the study, saying it was our opinion, professional opinion, that those offsite costs were of a magnitude that made the capital structure or stack to make this feasible for a commercial lender, equity participant, that it wouldn't make it financially viable if they had to layer that on top of their other project costs, on-site infrastructure, et cetera. So it was a question of, but for, that's why CRAs are used, but for a CRA, the development wouldn't happen. So there wouldn't be any tax revenue to share or to talk about. There wouldn't be any additional sales tax increment. Sorry. Yes, yeah. And like I said, we did not go into detail in terms of the study of how you handle that. We did offer to the council some thoughts of, there's development agreements that are appropriate to talk about. There's ways in which you can structure a development agreement to protect the interests of the city and make sure that risks relative to that are borne appropriately.
Does council have any other questions for Mr. Birmingham at this time? If not, then I think we'll probably just have a discussion later. I don't know that anybody's ready to make a motion at this time, so. Any other questions specific for Mr. Birmingham from the council?
I was just going to ask, are there any other ways of financing that we could look at that would be more feasible or more palatable?
One for the benefit of the public, I did share in the work session, was a public infrastructure district.
Okay. So
the statute, there was a statute created 2 or 3 years ago that allowed for a governing body that has kind of a subset development within its community where you have public infrastructure that needs to go in, but you're concerned about the risk that it might put on the rest of the property owners or electorate, the rest of the citizenry. The public infrastructure was created so that you could make a separate legal local governmental entity solely and specific for the purpose of funding that public infrastructure improvement and no longer being a moral obligation, legal obligation, or credit obligation of the city. So that's a tool that you could consider in doing that. A lot of times what a public infrastructure district would rely upon would be the tax increment revenue that would be pledged to pay that infrastructure back. And oftentimes it's also credit enhanced with assessments on those property owners. So a special assessment lien on the retail, a special assessment lien on the grocer, special assessment lien most likely on the residential. And so that is a way that's being used in a number of cases for the very reason that you mentioned, maybe of, what about the risk of the public infrastructure up front? If we're left holding the bag, aren't our residents liable for it, et cetera? And yes, you would be unless you use like a public infrastructure district or through a development agreement, passed it through to the developer and had them commercially finance that. That would be another way to do it. So 3 ways. You issue the bonds and take a lot of the risk, create a public infrastructure district that defrays that, pushes it to a kind of a sole purpose entity that solely responsible for that, or use a development agreement to take the tax increment and basically pledge it back to the developer to then go and get the financing for all of the sewer improvement.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Is anybody going to make a motion? Are we, I don't know.
I'll make a motion to table.
You know what? We don't have, it's not public comment now. I'm sorry, it's up to the council.
I'll just make a comment, maybe a couple comments. I know that when it went through the planning commission, they gave some guidelines. And as a city council, we upheld those guidelines. And one of them, the CRA, the tax increment financing, all that stuff, does it work? Yeah, probably. But man, it's a lot of confusion. And it just seems like, I don't know if we want to go down that road. I think the question that we need to ask ourselves, because once, say we do approve this project, Hooper is going to go down a road that it's never going to be returned from. It's going to be higher density. It's not going to be Hooper the way it is. And do we need the money? Yes. Are we balancing our budget? Yes. Do we have enough money? Well, we do, but could we use more? Absolutely. It would just be nice if there was a development come in and just did a clean shot. They take care of the lift station. Would we benefit as a city? Yes. But that's the cost of doing business in Hooper, because we're going to give up a whole lot for that, Smiths, for that project. We're going to be just like West Kaysville. If that's what we want, then that's what we want. I know Debbie and I had a conversation and she brought up the idea, it's a pretty big decision for just 5 people. 4 of us are only here tonight to make, why don't we figure out how to put it to a vote and let the citizens decide? Because, I'm not sure it's a decision that just should rely on five of us. I don't know, but I'm a little concerned about the path that this would put us on. And yeah, I'm not going to be here in a few months. Someone else is, but that's my thought. But I'm still a citizen, and I do have a vote at this point. So I do have some, considerations. It'd be really, really nice if you just took care of that CRA. Yeah, it's a little bit of money, but I know there's a way that you could figure it out. That's my thought right now.
Well, and just to add to that, Bryce, I mean, we've had this discussion on these recommendations from the planning commission, and we passed those along to the developer, and we haven't even had an answer to those things. We talked about the no CRA, and there was one other thing we mentioned. The quarter acre lots. I mean, still on the map today that is up for approval, there's still quarter acre lots on there. We absolutely said, no, we don't want quarter acre. It had to be 30 acre lots to abut next to the other 30 acre lots. And that's not even been corrected. And so, no, we're not ready to make an approval motion because none of our questions and issues have been addressed from the planning commission or the city council. And so, it's a working relationship in my mind. It's a back and forth. It's not a come in here and tell us what you want and what you're going to do. It's a working relationship as to how we're going to make this happen, possibly. And so that's my concern is there's just been no answers to those conditions that we passed along.
Any other comments from the council? So again, I think based on what Reed said, we're probably not ready to make a motion yet. And on our agenda, it was just possible motion. So there does not need to be a motion made on any of these. I feel like we had a good discussion, and then we can certainly continue to get some of these questions answered that I think council still has some of the questions.
So let me ask Reed, maybe he knows because I haven't done the research. So what does it take to get something on a ballot? I have an idea, but I don't know the specifics. Yeah. Okay.
I doubt you can do it this year. Well, an opinion question.
It's very difficult to get to enough people without going to every single door. And you don't catch everyone, and you can't go to the no soliciting doors, which there are many. And I would like to hear what everyone in Hooper has to say. I feel it's a big decision for our city. And you just hear really from a small segment of the population when you ask.
If that's something of interest, we can look into that. What do you do?
The other alternative is just to simply create a survey. You know, you create an online survey and then you piggyback it with a mailer. And, you know, our general plan, we had record amounts of people respond with their opinions on our general survey, or our general plan survey that we've never had before. And that was, in our mind, pretty successful, with just creating a survey. And if you did it in a 2 or 3 different ways as a survey, and you know, gave people ample opportunity to respond, I think you'd be surprised the percentage of respondents you would get. Correct. Correct.
There's been a couple of other things that I might make mention to the council and to the public as well. And as was mentioned in the general plan, 5500 South was designated as what could be a future land use as commercial. There is another property owner that I was hoping was going to be here tonight, but he wasn't able to, that also owns some property up on 5500 South, up at 4300, that I think he had already spoken to the previous administration about possibly doing a Chick-fil-A is what, and he came into the city again about a week ago and could also be part of this same CRA. That where his property is there he cannot go into this same lift station because there is the elevation of the land, but there is a smaller lift station that would need to be put on his property that also would be part of this same CRA. Another thing that's been mentioned in a previous city council meeting is we have a main trunk line of our sewer that goes along 5100 West that has to be replaced. That is a mandate. It have to be replaced. That is to the tune of probably somewhere around $500,000 and upwards. That all of this land up there to the east also flows into that trunk line. It's a force main, would also be part of this same CRA. Those are some other considerations for the council to be looking at when we're doing this. Is it's not just primarily, this is a regional lift station, of course, that's not just for the property on 4755, but it also, then the CRA could include this other property up on 43. So there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of moving pieces to this, so. Well, if you feel like we've had enough discussion, should we move on to our next agenda item? Okay, let's move on to our next agenda item then. We're going to move down to the discussion and motion of the fee schedule. So there's some things, and we've had this fee schedule in front of us. One thing, in order to make any, we can discuss this tonight, but this will have to have a public notice. And so we can, you know, again, talk about the fee schedule of things. Thank you. And then it has to be public noticed. And so we can't approve our fee schedule until our next city council meeting. But we need to, you know, some things we talked about last time. I know we had some discussion about even the rental of our property anyway, we just need to discuss some of these things with the fee schedule. So we can just go through it. I don't know if you've had a chance to review it since we discussed it in our last city council meeting?
I have the big one for me. I had a couple I had one phone call, but it was pertaining to a couple people. They are extremely concerned about the Sunday activities on our parks. I don't know, maybe they've reached out to you too. I don't know. So I think we need to take a hard look at the Sunday activities that I believe probably should be just reserved for our community members and not to outside entities. And I'll just add a couple scenarios, say if we have police called to that, for whatever, there's a scuffle or whatever. If we have one call, that's going to blow everything that we made off that. Say if we have two, then they're in the deficit, we're in the deficit. And I'm not sure our sheriff agency is contracted to police tournaments and that. I don't know. I don't know if that's part of their contract or not. Anyway, so I know there's some public concern about that activity, those activities happening on Sundays, just because of the magnitude and the traffic and all that kind of thing. So I don't know, we need to talk about what we're going to do on that if we want to allow that continue. Do they have a contract or? So how long is the contract for?
Ignore my phone. Ignore what? Sorry. If both microphones are on, it likes to static. But the group that is renting on Sundays has paid for their days that they've requested. Their payment is up next Sunday, August 10th. They are requesting for more Sundays, but I told them we were looking into changing everything so not to pay for more. So I guess their contract is done next Sunday, the 10th. This following Sunday, I guess.
So that's just $100 per day. Per
Um,
entire day.
Well, we charge them per field for so many hours. I couldn't tell you that
Oh,
total amount.
25
Well,
per field
okay,
for
then.
5 hours.
Yeah.
And then plus the restrooms maybe would do 125.
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
Okay.
So I know we brought this up too, and maybe I haven't had time to figure it out. But what's the cost of our employees to clean up after them, our dump fees? I would dare say we're not making anything. It's just kind of a burden on our city. No, I don't think so. But I know, but other tournaments of this magnitude have had calls. Is that correct? Yeah.
So, I mean,
Hey,
just looking at the other park, we wrote down, or we have a current fee of $500 per day for the big park. And we talked about going to $750 for the entire day. Would this park be similar or smaller? And what about Sundays? That's the question.
Yeah, that's one thing, like I mentioned, we talked about last time about increasing our fees and even having non-resident fees. Because, I know last time we mentioned Debbie had done a lot of, we kind of divide up parks, and Debbie had called numerous, and I had as well, that we had talked about. So I think we need to raise our fee schedule. We talked about some increasing those. And again, then I think that needs to be something we decide whatever city council wants to do about renting those. But I think that is something we need to consider as far as with our rentals. And
so you live across the street. What's it like on Sunday? I mean, both of you do.
Sundays are really busy. So I don't know, there hasn't been any fights or things like that. And as Lieutenant mentioned, I've never seen a sheriff's car have to come out here.
Maybe.
But it is really busy. It's full.
Well, if we allow them to do that, then maybe in part of the contract, if a sheriff comes out, you're going to pay for it, and then you're done. You don't rent anymore. if there's scuffles.
I think to answer the question, I don't remember now which one of you that, because even these prices we are renting now doesn't ever pay for the service, because it doesn't matter whether it's just the large Bowery or the small Bowery. You know, if you see what our current rental fee is, and it was $10, I think, $10 to rent the small Bowery. $10 doesn't even pay to get a garbage can dumped for one of our employees to have to go. So that's, why we thought we really do need, we're not trying to make these fees higher than what our residents can pay, but it also has to, at least, we're just trying to break even on our costs. We don't want it to have to be more than that.
So I don't have a copy of the fee schedule in front of me. That wasn't part of our packet, I don't think, but is this something we need to take another look at? If there's some prices that need to be adjusted or changed, before we make a motion to approve this one? Is that?
I think so, but I mean, we have a deadline of August 10th, that the current contract expires. I mean, I guess we can extend that for one more week or two weeks,
Right, okay.
But yeah, I mean, there's just in the park rentals, you got the Boweries, you got the park, you got half the park, you got one ball diamond, you got the restrooms, on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I think we need to revamp it,
We do.
revamp it and raise the rate.
Maybe I have a study committee that needs separately to come up with some of this.
Yeah.
Well, and we did, I think, when Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, when she sent this out to you, she said that you'd received this fee schedule, and we did talk about this in our last city council meeting. But again, if you could review this, because we would need to have a public hearing on this, which we could do at our next city council meeting to get input from community. And it wouldn't be until after that public hearing that we would be able to vote anyway to change this. So if we're agreeable with that, we could go ahead and do the public hearing. At our
Hearing next meeting and maybe have a sub meeting before then of some folks that can put some ideas in.
Well, and what, we discussed last time. So I know, as I mentioned, Debbie and I, so what happened with this, it was Morgan divided up the fee schedule. And so there was the portion that had to do with renting specific park equipment, for instance, like the bleachers. We have some portable bleachers that we gave to our park supervisor. As far as just the park fees, and Debbie had called a number of parks, I did as well. Jared went through our public works director and went through the public works section. Stephanie, who's over cemetery, called a bunch of places for the cemetery. Again, when it came to the inspection fees, that was our city inspector that did that. Morgan went through a portion, Malcolm had a portion of it. And so maybe what we could do is we could make a new copy with all of these changes that we gave to you last city council meeting. Then you'd have time to review them, and then we can have the public hearing. These with our maybe suggested changes that everyone had done could be in the packet for next time for the public hearing, so the residents would be aware of the possibility of these changes going up. Does that sound agreeable?
Actually get numbers on the park section, because we never talked about that last time.
So are you referring to the part as far as renting out, like as far as the small Bowery, the large Bowery? We did. So these were things that again, Debbie and I, because we met, this has probably been probably a year ago that we met on this, and we changed to have a resident rate and a non-resident rate. We talked about not having the deposit and having a credit card on file. And so, because it ends up being quite a cumbersome, time consuming to make sure we gather the deposits and give them back. And then sometimes you don't really know for sure which resident it was. So it was going to be on the small Bowery rental then. It was just going to be a straight $50 rental with no deposit fee and $100 for a non-resident The large Bowery then was going to include the Bowery and the kitchen, because we talked about last time, you cannot turn on the lights for the Bowery if you don't have a key to the kitchen area. And that was going to be 100 resident and 200. And then the only other thing, it went down to having then, instead of the $25, it would go to $50. And then the $100 for 9 resident. These were for each of the ball fields. There was also, we talked about possibly having a group fee for a season, because sometimes, for instance, we've had football, lacrosse, soccer, and then the price for renting the entire park was, instead of the 500, was $750, and then $1,500 for a non-resident. That is for the other park. We didn't have an entire one on this one, because this one is actually broken out by fields. Because at this park, you have the northeast ball, the southeast ball field, the northwest ball field, the southwest ball field. Where down at the other park, it's just mainly the baseball fields, and that's why they have those separated out. Yeah, that would be something you'd want to probably, as far as acreage, when you take into all those fields, it's a little bigger here than it even is down at the other. And the one other park, we said 750 and 1,500. And that was for the entire park, which includes all the facilities. Yes. Yeah. But if anybody has any, suggestions, like I'd say, everyone, all of city council does have a copy of this, and we could send out, Morgan could send you out another copy with all these numbers we talked about at our last city council meeting. And then we could plan on having that public hearing for people to be at our next meeting on the 21st. Does that sound agreeable with council? Okay. Okay, that was the last thing on our agenda. I just wanted to go back then, and I'll just address the question you had, Councilmember Fowers. No, no one has been hired. There was, you mentioned about being involved, and I know Morgan reached out to you about coming to that, and there was only one interview that was attended by our city recorder, our public works director, and by our road supervisor were the ones that were in with that interview, and no one was hired. So there probably will be additional interviews, and hopefully at that time, then you'll be able to be given further notice. So, okay, if nothing, any other questions? Sure.
One more thing. Can I request to add a line item every third Thursday, second council meeting of the month for a presentation on the budget?
Yes, that would be good. Yeah, I didn't know until after Cami today had said in the agenda had already gone out, but yes, let's do that. And if we only happen to sometimes, if there's only one meeting that month, we'll just make sure that we always have that. Where would you like that at in the agenda? Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Did you want to review anything? I know Cami had sent out this PowerPoint. I think all of council received this. Anything? Okay. Okay, that sounds good. We'll get that added. Okay. If not anything else from council, then is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion was made by Councilmember Fowers. Is there a second?
A second.
Second made by Councilmember